he reads to Hadrian this formal writ that has him being disavowed, to which Hadrian immediately, meaning like both his grandmother and his father have signed a document that says this person is no longer part of our family. And so Hadrian breaks in this moment. Welcome to another episode of the Devil's Rest Book Club, where we dive into the details of Christopher Rocchio's Sun Eater universe. I am your gilded bird in a cage host, Cameron, and with me today, holding the keys to my gilded cage, as he is every episode, is Drew. Drew, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, and this week we're going to be covering chapters 61 through 63 of the first book of the series, Empire of Silence. I'm excited. We are getting into very interesting stuff, and it's going to be not long before we're at the end of novel one. We're closing in on less than 100 pages rapidly. So we're going to be reaching some really interesting stuff soon. And there's a lot of good stuff in this episode, so I'm excited.
Yeah, this is the beginning of a new arc for us.
Yes.
Which is awesome, and we are always excited about the beginning for a new arc. But can you remind us of what the last arc ended with at the end of last episode?
Yeah, the last arc ends with the duel with Legia Vas. We have all of the political tension that has been developed over the previous mini arc culminating in a confrontation with Gilliam, which leads to the duel, and they have a showdown, a very tense scene where Hadrian is aiming to get First Blood to end the duel early so that he ends this confrontation with Gilliam. Lots of regret going into it, worry about his relationship with Volca, and he does not get First Blood and is forced to kill Gilliam in order to get out alive. And we're sort of left not knowing what happens to Hadrian post Gilliam's death until this chapter. And that's where we're going to pick right up.
And we will begin with chapter 61, A Kind of Exile. So like you say, it picks up immediately after, presumably he gets pulled off out of the arena, gets showered and patched up, and is immediately in Bailey and Mataro's office. And the last time that we were here was the first time that he ever met Bailey and Mataro in person, when Hadrian was discovered to be Palatine. And he woke up after being stunned by Legia Vas here. So we kind of mirror that now in this meeting. Balian is like debriefing with Hadrian. This is blown up. This is not the way that things should have gone. This is the worst of all worlds, is what we're going to come to find out. And Balian immediately starts telling Hadrian, like, that guy was right. This Tavrosi woman has got you by the balls. And before we talk about anyone else having anybody else by the balls, Hadrian is looking at the office again, and in his mind, like we've had the entire time, if we're reading really closely, the comparison between Alistair and Balian could not be more stark.
Yeah.
This episode, we're going to see a lot of comparisons where they are the same. So aesthetically, they may be polar opposites, but under the surface, they have more in common than we probably either would care to admit.
Yeah, Balian's sort of performing in a way that Alistair doesn't care to.
Yeah.
But at base, there's a very similar nature. Yeah.
Their ambition, we'll talk a lot about, is identical. Like they're very much all about advancement, about the house, etc. But Hadrian is looking at the office and being like, man, like Father's office is so dark, this is so light. Polar opposites there. He's highlighting the polar opposites between the two so that later when we realize that they're more similar than we care to admit, it's shocking to us. He admits to Balian that killing Gilliam was a mistake. Like he's justifying it. It's like, I wanted to get First Blood, but he was quicker than I thought. I underestimated him, and that's how it came to be. Balian's like, well, the first mistake that you actually made was challenging him in a duel in the first place. Like you should have just bit the bullet and like let him do his thing, and we would have avoided all of this, because now Legia is jumping up my ass for your body. She wants you dead. Scratch that. She wants you alive. Which, if you don't want to be alive, go into the chantry.
Not
if they're
all.
mad at you.
Yeah. You really feel the force of blame falling on Hadrian here. The moment that really stuck out to me is, Hadrian sort of does this thing where he kind of pseudo-justifies and says, well, this is legal. It wasn't murder, all this stuff. And he's very much like, listen, dude, you cornered him into this situation. You knew what you were doing. Like, this is not like, don't play dumb with me. I know what you did. And like, this is not good. You have put us in a very bad position. This is not just a mistake you've made on behalf of you. You've made a mistake on behalf of me, and you're involving me in it, because now I have to make a choice about whether to hand you over or not. It's a really bad position to put Bailey in.
Balian basically then says like, hey, the chantry has me by the balls. And so like, if she doesn't get what she wants, she's going to interfere in everything short of bringing the Inquisition to this planet. She's going to do everything in her power to screw my business up, which means my people are going to be upset, close to me and far away from me. Like my planet, And my plans for advancement in the society beyond this petty planet and whatever are going to be screwed up because of this. So you are my problem. You were not a problem before. You were a problem I could stomach because I got some benefit from you and things were working out. My plan was working and you screwed it all up. Now I have to send you away. Like I've got to protect you for 3 years. And we'll find out why in just a second. Hadrian, meanwhile, is like still feeling like adrenaline dump has happened and he's shaking. He keeps seeing the light out of Gilliam's eyes leave him. Like he says that he's seen dead people before, but he's never seen the light leave a human's eyes, especially ones that are like black and blue.
He just killed someone.
Yeah.
Like just for the first time. So he is having this conversation after being in the throes of guilt of killing somebody.
Yeah.
It's too much all at the same time.
And meanwhile, Balian's not letting him off the hook because he's saying like, if I didn't need you, I'd give you over to Legia right now. And Hadrian is sort of taken aback. He's like, finally, he's like, what possibly could you need me for? I've got no holdings. I've got no land. Like I've got a name and a ring and that's all that I am. Like and that's new. Like nobody knows that I'm here. What's the big deal? And then we find out, and we've been reading closely and we've been seeing some sketchy stuff with Anais the entire time, right? We now find out, confirmed from Balian on the page, is that Hadrian was to be married to Anais after her ephebia, which would be 3 years from now. Or Dorian, depending on his preference or whatever, right? It doesn't matter in the mind of Balian Mataro. And when Hadrian hears that, he's totally taken out of his guilt for Gilliam and Valka's disappointment in this moment. Like, it's the one thing that he's hearing. It's like, what? Like, this makes no sense. Like, what is it? He mentions, he thinks about Anais, how beautiful she is. Like he makes this beautiful description. What is it? I'll read that portion of it. I was a minute closing my jaw and another collecting the potsherds of my wits enough to stammer, marry your daughter? For a moment, both the glass-eyed specter of Legia Vas and my fear of Valka's fury blew away like smoke, clearing the air in my soul to reveal the figure of Anais Mataro. Slender, darkling, full-breasted, beautiful as the sunset, deep as a puddle. And so it's just like, whoa. Okay, so now he's making it clear on the page. I mean, he's already made it like he's been nicer on the page up to this point. But he's like, this is one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. I could not be less interested in her.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's weird that he doesn't have this thing for anybody Palatine, right? Like nobody Palatine at this moment in Hadrian's life has been interesting to him at all. It's always been a plebeian, or it's been somebody who is outside of the Palatine constellation, which is really interesting. I wonder why that is. But at least in terms of his ethic, he cares about depth more than he cares about physical beauty.
Yeah, he isn't into the Palatine thing. He feels alienated by it. Like everything similar to Palatine is like, everything he's running away from. And there's nothing about it that connects with him. All the, like he had lots of connection with a scholiast, some myrmidons, a Tavrosi researcher. There's no one that like,
rat.
He had a brief connection with his mom for like a second, but his entire experience has been alienation. So like, how could he possibly be interested in someone like her? Especially like, Hadrian is so intellectual. I mean, what would they even? They have nothing to connect over, and he's not a very vain person either. He's not going to be the person that puts looks over other things. So there's just nothing.
And his academic pursuits are weird by the standards of the Palatine.
Yes,
objectively, like he flirts with heresy way too much, as we see.
Correct.
But Hadrian is still stammering in his mind. He's like, this doesn't make any sense. What could I possibly have to offer you? This doesn't seem right. He mentions in his internal monologue, I haven't been Hadrian Marlowe in so long. This just seemed so strange, the idea of marrying into a Palatine house. Balian then explains to him, I didn't want to tell you this early, and I wanted this to be more organic and more slowly so you could get used to life here in court and Borsivo. And then Hadrian immediately, because he's thinking, well, okay, this is kind of screwing up my plans. Like, how am I going to get off planet if this is the way forward? Is that he's underselling what he has. And maybe he believes this. I think he believes some of it. He's like, I literally have nothing. And then in the midst of all that, when Hadrian's like trying to downplay and like say like, I'm not worthy, or like try to weasel himself out of this marriage, Balian asks how old Alistair is. Again, pulling Hadrian out of the moment. He's like, I don't know, close to 300. And then Balian continues to go through, okay, what about his dad? What about his mom?
Yeah.
What about your mom's side of the family? What, like all this? And Hadrian's finally just like, what is this going for? And then like, what's the point in bringing this age thing up? Balian then asks Hadrian, how old do you think I am, Hadrian? And Hadrian says, oh, I don't know, 200. Balian says, I'm 133. And Hadrian is completely taken aback by this moment. He's got gray in his hair. Like he's got like, for a Palatine, he is way too young to be looking as old as he does. And now we see the whole plan fall into place.
Yeah. I never fully appreciated the genetic component of the politics here until this moment. Because there's mention of like, varying genetics even amongst the Palatine, but this like really displays, I mean, the depths of inequality you could get even within this class of people that it's like, if we just think about this for a second of how intense the decision is here, Balian has been willing to risk the chantry for the potential of his daughter marrying him, and now is in the situation where he's risking the wrath of Legia. He could give Hadrian away. He's still willing to risk political action from them for his genetics. That's how big of a deal this is. This means that his house could live longer, have all sorts of advantages that he could not obtain without this is like a push all the chips in moment for him.
Specifically, his grandchildren would then not only have the genetic code that Hadrian has, which I think the number we get is like 692 is how much his grandmother lived to or whatever. And that we don't know how much we don't know how old his maternal grandmother is, but presumably she's been around for a long time because they're from the peerage, right? The peerage comes from mom's side of the family. Balian Mataro sees Hadrian we find out that he got Hadrian scanned the moment he showed up.
Yeah.
So Balian has known the entire time, and we knew that he knew who he was because he scanned his blood, but we did not know that he scanned everything about Hadrian and like got all of the line information in that indication when we met him immediately in the same room. Balian, the moment he sees Hadrian, sees that scan, realizes this is my play for my children to be part of the emperor's own peerage, right? Not only is this a status symbol, previously all we've seen with the emperor's own peerage, like being a distant relation to the emperor, is just like, you're a distant cousin. That's you're an old family or whatever. In Balian Mataro's case, this is the difference in like doubling his lifespan, essentially. Like his grandchildren's lifespan will be doubled or tripled based on the genetics that Hadrian owns. So Hadrian hasn't really given much thought to the idea, at least on the page, that he's a cut above your average normal Palatine when it comes to some of this genetic stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It speaks to just how serious this is, that like it's really dehumanizing too, actually, because Hadrian is being reduced to his genetics at this moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's never been about who Hadrian is. It's been about, can I get him to mate with one of my children or something, which is just all kinds of.
Well, mate, I don't know. It's a strong word.
Mate's probably the wrong word. Yeah, that's probably the wrong word, because they wouldn't even, good Lord. Yeah, it's so dissimilar from regular human interaction that it wouldn't even be that, I guess.
Yeah. So
wild.
To that point, though, this is where Balian and Alistair are really, really similar. Like all they see, all they focus on. Like he even mentions the fact that like, isn't Dorian supposed to be the heir to your house? He's like, that doesn't matter. Like that can be changed tomorrow. No big deal. What matters now is my grandchildren being the emperor's own peerage. That's the moment you stepped into the picture. This is the plan. And he is similar to Alistair in that like, no matter what, like that is advancement of his house, ambition, getting better, even though the aesthetics around the way they do things, like even Balian apologizes later in this conversation to Hadrian, like kind of superfluously, like he doesn't mean it, because obviously he's still going to do it and go through his plan, because this is the whole plan. He's staking his entire career on the possibility of his grandchildren being elevated. So the ambition that underlies both Balian and Alistair is identical, and they see it from a legacy house perspective, right? Like he's trying to elevate House Mataro, like Alistair's trying to elevate House Marlow.
Yeah, his cruelty is dressed up a little bit more than Alistair's, but it's still cruelty.
Mm-hmm. So Balian gives him the offer. It's like, look, if you give me your genetic code, if you can, like, if we're good and you get married to an Anais, I'll make you the highest possible post you can. Like you'll be Lord Consort, like anything you want. Basically, he's telling him you will become what Luther is to me, right? Like essentially like you. And if we really think about it too, all that we know about Anais at this point is that she's not very deep and not very smart, and like maybe she's more political than we realize, like Hadrian starts to realize, because Balian brings up like, of course Anais has known this the entire time, like
Yeah.
from the very beginning. And then Hadrian's like, oh, and then realizes something that we've known from the whole moment. Like, there's a reason that she's obsessed with him. And because from her standpoint, there probably is some like physical attraction to it, but there's also the attraction of like, my station is going to get higher by marrying this person.
Yeah.
Like, this is part, she's read in on the plan from the very beginning.
Yep. She's playing her part, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And that, to Hadrian's credit, he's like, perhaps she was deeper than I thought. Like, she's more conniving than I believed.
Maybe
Underestimating people again, getting him in trouble.
Slightly deeper than a puddle by just a little bit.
He's so mad at himself that he didn't realize this quicker. And he'd like start to yell. He's like, I'm not your stud. And then Balian is like, that is exactly what you effing are. Like, doesn't matter. Like, you have no position to bargain anything. Like, this is not your game. Like, I don't care if your thing was lawful or not. Like, your duel was lawful or not. Legia only wants your head, and that's it. And you know what? You should be glad. This is the best cage you could have been offered. And you know her and she likes you. And that's more than most people can say of their arrangements. And Hadrian realizes the cage was closed really much tighter than he initially thought. Balian in this moment starts chewing Varrock's a leaf, which we've gotten an indication before that it's like a stimulant leaf. Similar, it sounds like tobacco, like a chewing tobacco type thing to me. I looked up to see if there was anything related to that on Earth, and it's like Ferox is like an aloe-based thing, but there's no like psychotropic aspect to it. So it's probably just some stimulant plant from another planet. But Hadrian, like playing his last card in this moment, looks at Balian and says, well, this is all well and great if you get my genetic code, but your kids will not be part of the peerage until like I have to be officially recognized for that to be the case. Like, just because you have the genetic code and you want this like sanctioned by the High College or whatever, part of that is going to be revealing where I am physically. And you can't do that without bringing a chantry on your head. And Balian, in this badass moment, pulls out a piece of paper. Hadrian mentions the fact that like normally this would be on vellum and official and all this different stuff, but clearly this has traveled many, many light years to get here. But it's as official as it could be. He reads to Hadrian this formal writ that has him being disavowed, to which Hadrian immediately, meaning like both his grandmother and his father have signed a document that says this person is no longer part of our family. And so Hadrian breaks in this moment. He is guilty about killing Gilliam. He's no longer a Marlowe. The cage has never seemed smaller or more like ironclad in this moment. And he doesn't even have his ring to fall back on. His plan to be able to get off planet by using his ring and using that, like the time that he could potentially, the lag that it would take he'll get the ship and he'll leave, and somebody else will figure out the details, out the window. Because the moment that writ came out, the ring is useless.
I'm noticing, as we talk about this, we've had, this is a coming of age story, and we're sort of gradually tripping and falling on our face over and over again, trying to learn lessons and trying to refine Hadrian into something for the future of the story. And there's an interesting replication of the earlier part of the story where, we had Hadrian in a gilded cage at the start of our story, and he escapes and he naively runs into a terrible situation. And we have Hadrian once again, on a mesh, running through this situation, running face first into another gilded cage. And now we have another rock bottom moment where Hadrian is in this position, he's stuck, he's trapped, and now he doesn't even have his family anymore. He's been ripped away from the only thing he had left, which is this ring. This is sort of like, the story is slowly stripping things away from Hadrian, and the last thing to strip away was the fact that he had this leverage to bail himself out of whatever situation he's in. This moment really affected me the first time I read it. There was something that felt especially cruel about the disavowal from his family. It almost seemed worse than father being angry and dragging him back to Delos or forcing him to go to be a part of the chantry. This feels like he has so much contempt for Hadrian that he doesn't even want an association with him anymore. It's like, it's just I don't know, just a sort of despair type moment alongside. It puts Hadrian in a position where now I think he fully has to rely on himself moving forward in the story, because he's got no get out of jail free cards anymore. We had our first rock bottom, but we always had our get out of jail free in the back pocket. We used it, and now we're back at the bottom again. And so the question is like, how does Hadrian move from here?
Because we know
God.
he doesn't end up spending the rest of his life on Imesh. Like, we know that at the end of the story, he blows up the sun,
Correct.
eats
Yeah.
the sun, something, right?
Mhm.
So he's going to, this situation is going to be changed at some point, but it's hard to see how from this vantage point. It seems he's really trapped in this situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
We come to find out that Balian had contacted Delos like immediately the day that Hadrian was. The moment he saw that he was part of the Emperor's peerage, like he sent a QET wave to Delos immediately. Hadrian finds us out and is like, what was the deal that you made with my father? Was it for 30 pieces of silver? Balian like doesn't get the reference, but Hadrian is clearly referencing the fact that Judas Iscariot was paid 30 pieces of silver to give up Jesus to the authorities. So this is like a betrayal. Like he's portraying this as a betrayal. Balian, on the other hand, is like, you should consider this an honor. Like, you're becoming my son. Hadrian's like, I'm just becoming your whore. And in this moment, he probably has more empathy for Switch than he's ever had.
It's a weird reversal. You know, he has had empathy for folks in this position throughout the story. Not precisely this one, but his sexual ethic is different than those in his world, and he's being put in this position now where he feels like, I'm sure, very dehumanized. This is something that we haven't seen him in quite yet, but it's messed up, especially because it really doesn't feel like there's a way out at this point, right? Like it's hard to imagine what happens now. There's so much leverage on him being in this position. It's so important to this house that he's used this way, and he just doesn't have it out anymore. It's not good.
We get another Gibsonism here. We get grief is deep water.
I love
which
this,
is a beautiful one. It's a beautiful description.
You know what's interesting? Grief is deep water. Is that what it is in your edition? Mine's actually different, I think.
What does it say?
I guess it's grief is emptiness in mine. Let me double check and verify. I do like grief is deep water.
Yeah, page 433.
Let's verify. Grief is emptiness in my version.
Yeah, so this is probably a retcon, right? Later he comes up with grief is deep water and probably just applies it to this, because that comes up in later books, we can say.
What do you think? What do you think about the difference between those two things? Grief is emptiness.
It's kind of polar opposite to some extent, right? Like grief is emptiness. Yeah, there is an emptiness to grief in that, like, typically you're grieving something that is no longer possible or someone that is no longer there.
Yeah.
Like there's a voided
or something.
aspect to that. But I like grief is deep water better, because I think grief never truly goes away.
Yeah.
And that emptiness sure doesn't go away, but like you can manage deep water better than you can manage emptiness, right? Like at the beginning of grief, you're like surrounded, you're drowning in the deep water, and you learn how to paddle gradually, and it never fully goes away. Like it's still there. Like I think about family members I've lost, and it never truly goes away, but at the same time, like you learn how to swim better in the deep water.
I like that. There's also, I think, something that feels really heavy to me about grief. I don't know why heavy comes to mind, but there's something that I think that deep water gets to. There's a weight to grief.
Yeah.
And a persistence to grief. There's also something that feels slightly more poetic to me about grief being deep water.
Because it's not, I don't think it's as empty. It's like full of emotion. Like immediately grief, like you lose something, you lose somebody, you're surrounded by emotion. Like it's all emotion.
And water's a good analogy for it too, because, in my experience, I've seen people for grief, and my experience with grief and talking with people that are grieving really intense losses is that the problem is often that you have so much emotion that you're just trying not to spill it everywhere. Like you're surprised by it in just day-to-day life. It just overflows, and all of a sudden you're crying in a random conversation. You're trying not to. Water is probably the more apt analogy for like several reasons on top of the poetic nature of it. So more development from Rocchio. So good. Grief is deep water. That's the one we'll carry forward.
Yeah. And it's not the last time that we'll hear that, for sure.
Correct. Yeah.
Hadrian turns to practical matters, like, okay, well, fine. Like, if that's the case, what's the way forward? And Balin's like, I'm kind of a mind. Like, we've got 3 years until, like, she's got to meet her Ephebia before, like, do her Ephebia before we even consider any of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've got to protect you and your blood for now. Like I've got to keep you out of sight, out of mind of the Chantry, so they can't find you. I got to send you away. I'm thinking about sending you to the green planet up there, the green moon up there, Binah. I don't know why he changes the name of the Archon here, but he does. Talat Melia is the Archon of Binah. In the new version, that name has changed since the old version. But she's like, I'm of a mind to send you to the moon, just like so that you're out of Legia's clutches. And then the chapter ends with like Hadrian asking Balian something, like offering an alternative, presumably, but we don't know what. And that's where chapter 61 ends. We begin with chapter 62, the Gilded Cage.
We have said this so many times.
Yeah.
And yet the chapter is finally here.
Yeah.
Gilded Cage.
Probably won't be the last time we hear that.
No kidding. Yeah.
Same day. So all of this is happening like immediate. Like he leaves that meeting with Baliam Taro and now he's back in his rooms and he's plastered. Like he is drunk. Yeah. Elomas has sent up a case of wine for him, probably knowing that he'll need something to get through the night, which is interesting. But he's drunk. And he is out of wine in his glass, so he grabs his journal and then he starts like trying to sharpen his pencils with his scalpel. And he's so drunk that he just like breaks the tip off the pencil. He's like, God dang it, and throws it away or whatever. He has this like weird religious, like shameful moment that I think that I've had 10,000 times. Anytime that I feel the weight of my sin or whatever, like bear down, or my actions bear down upon me. Yeah, it's like this one feels really deep in terms of the story. You know, that weight of burden that your actions that have negatively affected you and other people, that bearing down on you. That's what he's feeling in this strange religious moment where he questions like maybe the Chantry are right. And maybe Mother Earth is real. And maybe Gilliam like cursed me with his dying breath and that this is the curse that Mother Earth is going at me right now. So not only is he having that, but like turn that dial up to 11 because he's also drunk.
The weight of having hurt somebody else is typically it's typically when most of the if I hurt myself, I'm like, okay, I'm relatively forgiving. But if I hurt somebody else, it's like that's so hard to let go. And I can't imagine what the weight feels like after killing somebody. I can't even fathom.
He's thinking about his new future. He kind of like is tooling around with the idea of being the Lord Consort of Imesh. And I did want to bring this up, like, again, he could rule from behind in this case. Like, if Anais is just as vacuous as we think that she is, I mean, maybe she's got more cunning to her than we initially had imagined. But, like, the job will really, the title will be hers legally, but Hadrian could be running things from the background and wield power that way.
And his children.
If he wanted to. Right.
Yeah. It's the second offer that he's getting in this book thus far that other people might have taken. You know, like he could have been really high up in the Chantry. He could be here. He's dissatisfied by it, despite the station of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, he really just has to have things his way, for sure.
Correct. Yeah.
And like, regardless of that, like he's chewing on that, and he's just like, it doesn't sit well with me. And the quote that he writes here is, the bird cares not that his cage is gilded. So this like whole analogy with the bird in a gilded cage, I looked up a lot of stuff on this. There is a Tin Pan Alley vaudeville song that was originally published in the year 1900 called A Bird in a Gilded Cage that was written by Arthur J. Lamb and Harry von Tilzer, which is like the first major use of this analogy. But this could also be potentially a reference to a novel by Anna Catherine Green, who published this in 1881, the novel The Sword of Damocles, which we've already had referenced in the story up to this point. Regardless, late 19th, early 20th century, this analogy comes forth, and it's the bird. It doesn't matter what's on the outside or what the cage is made out of. The bird is still in the cage, no matter what. And Hadrian desperately seeks that freedom. And he's always sought that freedom from the very beginning. It is ironic, though, that he is landing ass first into a higher station than Alistair, despite not wanting title in this way. Like, he realizes as he's thinking about Lord Consort of Imesh, like, technically I'm higher station than my dad is. Maybe not in real power because he's, the uranium aspect of things that are going on Delos or whatever. But according to everybody else who's looking at it on paper, this is a higher station than just being Archon of a province. Like, he's the second in command of a planet, essentially. Or a system.
Hadrian just swatting away all the good stuff that other people would.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. I'm better than this.
Yeah, he's picky.
Yeah, in fairness, it's very easy, I think, to look at these positions from the outside, and people are like, oh, you would be lucky to do it. Like, it may be the case that other people would like this. Those people, the Hadrian is not those people. And I think the truth is probably to accept a position that you're completely unsatisfied with and probably will have a hard time with. It's probably setting yourself up for a resentful and unhappy life. He would
We know that
probably
Hadrian
struggle
up
through.
to this point, like, is totally unwilling to sacrifice his values for anything, literally anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is that in every scenario, right? Like he could do this, but this is sacrificing his sexual ethic. He can do this, but this is sacrificing his, truthful ethic or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
He's just totally unwilling to do that. He values his strange ethical system more than anything else. And in that way, he kind of mirrors Elric of Melniboné from the Elric saga, at least at the very beginning.
I need to read it. I've got it on my shelf. It sounds so sweet. I will say, in fairness, though, to be devil's advocate a little bit with Hadrian, he is consistent with his values, but I will also say he is very passionate for it as well. So it isn't just him being perfectly high and mighty. I think he also just is really fixated on wanting to do what he wants to do. He wants to explore, wants to do this stuff. So it isn't purely being a good person. He wants to follow his passion. And that is, well and good. His passion may be important and all this stuff, but it isn't simply this is the right thing to do. He also just wants to be like a storybook character. That's what he wants for himself.
Drunkenly, he flips off the cameras in his room and then realizes, oh, these aren't the cameras on Delos. I might get in trouble. And then as he's like thinking that, the door opens despite him having locked it earlier. Now, the only indications that we've had up to this point of anybody being able to open the door are the Mataros. Presumably, maybe the Chantry has access to do this as well. He grabs a scalpel thinking that it's somebody who's there to kill him, like an assassin or whatever, and he like ends up bumping into the couch, falling over. And he realizes it's Valka who's opened the door. Now, I want to make a note about the fact that she's able to open a locked door. This is another point. I think at this point, the overwhelming evidence is she has some way to manipulate the technology and the infrastructure in the castle because she was unworried about talking about the quiet out in the open in her room. So either the cameras are turned off in her room or she has the ability to wipe the memory of the cameras or block them or whatever.
Yeah.
And she has the ability to open locked doors that aren't her own. She has some way of manipulating this technological infrastructure in the castle.
There was also some weird moment about her like repeating a sentence
memory
in
stuff,
the specific inflection
word for
of
word in the snake and the mongoose thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some weirdness going on here. We're not exactly sure what it is yet, but it's there on the page.
She can't help, like even when she's trying to be sweet or whatever, like she can't help but just be really cutting. She immediately goes, if you're trying to drown yourself, you've chosen a really inefficient way to do it. She's like, it's wine. She's like, yeah, that's the problem. And she goes to get him a glass of water. And, in this moment, despite the fact that she's brusque and making a joke, she is being tender with him. Like she gets him a glass of water and tells him to drink. Like it's not an option. She's like trying to nurse him in his drunken state. And she's trying to be tender with him.
I think it says something about her character that she does not kick him while he's down in this scene. The interactions we've had previously with Valka, if you hadn't read this scene, you might think that she just comes in here and just lays into him again, right? Because for all intents and purposes, she should be furious right now because her worst fear and frustration is now realized that he killed someone because of an argument that he started in defense of her. But she walks in and recognizes the moment and is like, oh, like he already get, like he understands and is like, she's not going to start kicking him in the ribs while he's already drunk and moping on the floor. So it says something new about Valka is important, I think.
And Hadrian doesn't expect this. Like he looks, and now he's drunk in this moment, but he looks at her and he says, I had seen uglier statues of Venus in the old archives, though surely this here was Pallas. And so I wanted to quote that line specifically because there's a lot of depth going on here. And I had to think about it and look a lot of this stuff up. Like, obviously, he's seen uglier statues of Venus. He's elevating Valka's beauty to the level of Venus or Aphrodite, same god, Roman versus Greek, the goddess of love. She's more beautiful than the goddess of love, at least in some depictions. But though surely this here was Pallas, Pallas is actually a reference. It's an epithet to the goddess Athena. Pallas in Greek, there's like 5 different palaces, so I had to really do a lot of looking it up. In this case, it's a way to refer to Athena, the goddess of war and wisdom. And so in this moment, he's expecting her initially to kick him while he can't make eye contact with her at this moment in the room because he's expecting to get a beat down. And so him saying this, though surely this here is Pallas, is like, she's come for war. Like she's come to, slap some sense into me.
Yeah.
But she doesn't do that. And he apologizes to her. He then asks for more wine. And she's like, I think you've had enough. Like it's already over. And she says, like I did come in here to, it says a lot about her in that situation, to realize in the moment not to do that. Because she didn't come here to be tender, love, and care. She came here to do exactly what he expected. But seeing him in this sorry, sad state, she's like, why would I kick a sad puppy,
Yep. She has empathy. She has
Yeah.
the capacity for empathy. This is one of the things that's actually really important for relationships is, can you connect with the empathy for the person you are about to be angry with enough to change the course of how the conversation is going to go?
Yeah.
When
Boy,
we
that's
get
hard.
caught. Yeah, when we get caught in a death spiral, it's really hard because when we get angry with someone continually and we get stuck there, we don't want to feel what they're feeling. We don't want to understand what they're, because we're just mad. But if we can sit with the person and really think about what they're going through and try to see them, what they're going through, it's really hard when you're feeling empathetic towards someone to want to yell at them. It's really actually difficult. It hurts to do so. You want to resolve, you want to fix. And at least with the current state of their relationship, despite the fact that she's upset with him when she walks in and sees him this way, that there isn't enough bridges burned yet for her to just torch the whole thing down. She cares enough to let it go in the moment and to just be there with him and put his feelings first, which speaks to like an emotional maturity that she has, actually, funnily enough.
Hadrian still can't look at her despite the fact that she's treating him this way. And he's like trying to explain, like, look, I was just going to cut him. Like, I underestimated him. He's quicker than I thought. Like, he's trying to just he's doing that for himself too, right? Like, that's who he's primarily doing this for. But he's also trying to lessen the blow to her and be like, look, this is not the way that this is supposed to go. Like, this wasn't a plan. And she knows that. He also mentions on the page, like, she should not have been able to get inside in the first place. So another reason that we think that she's got some weird power to be able to open doors that she shouldn't be able to. She calls him an idiot. She's like, you are an idiot, but you're not a liar. And she's referencing the fact that, like, it is true that he has never killed anybody before. And she can tell that he's never killed anybody before. And she says it's not easy. And Hadrian does not ask her why, but it's presumed, and he figures out pretty quickly, despite the fact that he's drunk in this moment, that clearly she's killed a person before.
Yeah.
And has been through it. And that's where the empathy is coming from. She then asks, okay, well, what's next? Like, where do we go from here? Like, she's immediately trying to, you got to pick yourself up and move on. At this moment, Hadrian then drops all of the bombs related to, like, the upcoming marriage with Anais Mataro and him possibly being sent away to the moon. And then he reveals to her that he asked Bailey and Mataro to send him to Calagah with her and her crew instead of to the moon. She is, like, alarmed, obviously, and I don't know. He sort of invited himself. He apologized for it, but he sort of invited himself along the trip. And she's like, why Calagah? There's a moment I wanted to read before that. He on page 436, he mentions, if ever there were a moment, a point at which Valka warmed to me, it was then. I could almost feel it the way one feels the sound of ice cracking when water is poured into a glass. Her cold and brittle smile softened. Instead of answering, she rose and tugged my empty cup from my hands, went to refill it, and I was left in silence for the better part of a minute, watching the bob and dart of tiny ships against the distant Celadon Sea. In the evening sunlight, the green waters turned the color of mud, and all the world was cheap as bad painting. This is what Gibson meant about the ugliness of the world, I thought. But perhaps the world was perfect, and it was only myself that was ugly. Kind of an inversion of what Gibson meant by this, but natural for him to feel this way in this state.
I do. It's the weirdness of, like, the goodness in the bad moment is, like, the ugliness of the world kind of vibe. Like, there's, if someone loses a family member and they're grieving, but someone is there to comfort them, there's, like, a weird, like, paradox in a moment like that, where the world is terrible and also there's a good thing happening where you feel, like, supported and loved by someone. And there's something specific about that in a moment where you need it that much that isn't possible outside of when you're grieving or something. There's, like, this weird, strange ugliness, beauty thing that happens. This is, I think, one of the first moments since the ugliness of the world. We've seen it a couple times, but it's shouted out here on the page of, like, how do you, like, find silver linings in terrible moments? And if it's the first moment where she really connects and it warms to him, it happens here in this strange moment. That's maybe our silver lining for like what happens when he sort of starts to recognize, you know, he says something to the effect of like, maybe the Empire isn't good for me. Maybe I need to get out of here. Because like
Yeah.
this doesn't, and be away from these people that put me in these positions where I have to make decisions I don't like, or I end up doing things I shouldn't do, just being around it. So far the court has been bad for Hadrian, and it's made him a less good version of himself.
She then proceeds to ask specifically why does he want to go to Calagah, and he lies to her. He says it's because of the Xenobites, and in the italics on the page, he's like, "It's to you, and it's the possibility of escape." Like, that's my only hope at this point. Like, he wants to. Well, one, he is interested in the Xenobites. That is that is something that he is not truly 100% lying about, but it's not priority number one in his brain. His priority number one, because she has him by the balls, is spending more time with her and the possibility of escaping his current fate. It seems like it's the only thing he's staking his life on at this moment of potentially having. I don't think he believes that it'll happen. He just, maybe for a few months he can get away, or for a few years can pretend like his doom is not approaching. He apologizes again for everything, and she says, "It's okay. I'll yell at you later." He then tells her that he's been disavowed. He's no longer a Palatine. He's not part of House Marlowe anymore. And he takes his ring in this very symbolic moment. It's very polar opposite to what happens in Dune. And he takes the ring and he throws it across the room and is like, "Let the cleaning bots get it. Like, I don't need this. Like, this is," just gives up on the ring. Like, something that he's held so dear to himself in this drunken stupor is like, "I'm done. Like, it means nothing to me anymore."
It's interesting because, like one of the things that I'm trying to piece together is like, what is the theme of each of these coming of age moments, right? Because I feel like the first coming of age theme is something to the effect of the fact that he's too naive and he's too headstrong, running face first into danger because he thinks that he knows better than the whole universe.
Yeah.
And he gets a firm dose of reality for that.
Naivete isn't the only thing, though. There's a pride or an arrogance aspect to it too.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
they go
I
hand
agree.
in hand in leading to the same outcome.
Yeah, the someone who is humble but naive might go into a situation cautiously because they know they don't know. But he's arrogant enough to think he knows while being naive, and that's the mistake, right? In this coming of age moment, it almost feels like the lesson we're being taught here is that he didn't let go enough of his previous identity. He still was holding on to it throughout this entire time. Using that identity is partly what got him into trouble here. I mean, he's discovered it's put him in a gilded cage over and over again. And it's possible he should have let the whole thing go potentially. We'll have to see what happens moving forward to see if that goes further. But he has this moment in the previous chapter where he's lamenting, like, I never should have put myself in this position. I never should have used my thing. I never should have. I never should have done this. I've trapped myself again with this. He's throwing it away now. It feels like maybe he didn't strip himself back far enough when he learned his first lesson, and now he gets to fully reconstruct himself with a completely fresh start, trying to not make the same mistakes again. I'd be really interested to see moving forward if there's anything more built on that.
That's an interesting thought, but like Balian sort of intimates that never would have happened, right? Because Hadrian wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
And the real mistake that he makes is talking to the Cielsen and then getting stunned and getting scammed, right? Like that's from the moment he did that, like it was his fate was set, at least down the current path that he's going, because that's when Balian sent out his genetic code and stuff like that.
I will say though, he used his station previously when he was at the Myrmidons. It's entirely possible he gets caught there trying to do this schemey plan with the ring. He almost ruins one of his friendships holding on to this identity. He puts himself in the situation with Gilliam and kills Gilliam because he uses his identity to trigger a duel, and he's made a situation even worse. He would have had to
made the cage shut more tightly. I will agree with that. Like he could have potentially weaseled out of the wedding thing, gotten off planet. Like maybe some of that would have worked, or something else would have come up. Now the fact that he can't be in Borisivo and with his friends anymore, like his one out seems totally gone.
Yeah. Because he forced the issue and embodied being a Palatine again, he has trapped himself. So he's going to have to figure out a new way out without using it now. So we'll see. It'd be really interesting to see what happens.
As he's having this internal monologue moment, thinking about like, I am, throwing this ring across the room. I'm like disconnecting from House Marlowe because they've discarded me. Like, I don't want to do this. And he says, the sword our order indeed. Like that's the only thing he says out loud. It's like just his house words. And then Volk immediately walks across the room and slaps him across the face, which jars him and takes him out of the moment, which is the whole point. And she looks at him and says like, hey, dude, you are the only person to blame in this scenario. Don't blame this on anybody else. You got yourself in this scenario. It's the same thing Balian said too. Like both of these people, despite the fact that like one is being more helpful than the other, are both telling Hadrian, this is your fault. Don't let anybody else don't put anybody else on the hook for your mistake. This is you. You need to learn from this. And we get another Gibsonism in this moment.
Yeah.
Which is
Yep.
the fool believes the iniquities of the world are the fault of other men. The truly wise try to change themselves, which is more difficult and less grand, is the more difficult and less grand task, which is like a very Stoic belief in philosophy, but it's also echoed in Christianity in like taking care of the log in your own eye rather than the splinter in your brother's, for instance.
Yeah, there's several things going on here that I think are interesting. So, like, first of all, I think there's a truism to kind of what Volka says that I think is a really important lesson for us to take away, which is that the more we focus on like situational factors and not what we are contributing to our outcomes, the more miserable we make ourselves in some sense. There's a place, there's a place for discussing circumstance. Circumstance is important. It does affect our behavior. But if we're in a situation and we refuse to take any accountability, we turn ourselves into like kind of an endless victim that is just being cast about. It's a big problem. It makes us extremely resentful. Taking responsibility for even a small part of a situation can be an antidote to resentment. You know, when people are doing resentment inventories and trying to work on substance abuse and stuff like that, it's like find the bad stuff in your life and figure out where you played a part in it. Even if it's tiny, how did you contribute? Because we have to find agency in our own mistakes. We can't just do this thing. There's obviously limits to this, but as a general rule, trying to figure out what we've done to contribute at least a little bit. We can always be better. And to suggest we can't is sort of a losing strategy. The other thing here of Gibson's statement about believing the world is bad because like other people are imperfect or something like that, rather trying to change ourselves, has two interesting points. One is that it's easier and more emotionally satisfying to talk about how other people suck so much that the world sucks. It's so easy. It's so self-righteous. It's emotionally satisfying and doesn't work very well. You complain about the world and how other people suck and nothing changes. In the hard work, the more humble work, because it feels like it doesn't matter as much, but it's actually the whole point is to look at yourself and figure out what you've done wrong and try to just change yourself like 1% over time and try to be a better person. It requires, I think, a humility to say, you know, I don't really know what's going on in the world. I'm really kind of dumb. I don't get it. There's probably more to it than I think. And I'm just going to like try to eat a little healthier tomorrow, trying to be slightly kinder, hold doors open for people, and just try to be a slightly better version of myself. It takes humility to do that, but it actually matters. It makes a difference. Wonderful. This is probably one of my favorite Gibsonisms thus far because it rings so true to me. In my experience, especially, it's just so easy to and feels so good to complain about the world all the while.
And everything in the world today is made specifically to make us feel that way, right? Like
yes,
to drive engagement on social media and all this different stuff. It's really easy to get trapped in that sort of doom spiral, like you said. Of it's everybody else is the problem. It's not me.
Yep. And even when you say this out loud, you can feel another part of yourself wanting to leap out of your skin saying, but this thing, yes, it does. It does. And also what we really have control over is our tiny little circle of the universe. And if you focus so much on everything out there, you will never look inward. And it's important for your life. You probably have a moral obligation to do so. Take care of yourself first. Thank you, Gibson.
Yeah.
It's a spitting fire. It's so good.
Gibson's the best.
Yeah, he's the best.
Hadrian talks to Volka about the fact that he still can't get the light leaving Gilliam's eyes out of his head. And then she just like says, shh, and they just share this like really beautiful, quiet moment with no words exchanged. And it's her telling him to like just let go, like trying to distance himself from the situation. He asks if he can go with her to Calagah. She asks about Anais, like knowing that he has to come back to Borsivo eventually. And he's like, yeah, I know, but and then she lays her hand on his cheek, and even in the narrative, he says like, I don't even remember what I said at this moment. Like I forget everything else. And that's where the chapter ends. Like he loved this moment that Valka putting her hand on his cheek makes him forget about everything else, at least temporarily, which is a decent way to end chapter 62. And we will begin our final chapter of the day, chapter 63, Calagah. So presumably a few days or weeks later.
4 months.
I thought 4 months. Is it? I thought 4 months was like what they spent on Spring Deep.
Am I missing? Maybe I misread. I thought it said it was 4 months to the day since he'd killed Gilliam.
4 months. Local months to the day from my duel with Gilliam, I followed Valka and my new friends from the Spring Deep research team out from under the wing of our shuttle onto the mossy stones in the rise above the cleft at Calagah. So Spring Deep is on the continent. So we don't know how long he's been. He's left Borisivo for some time. And then 4 months to the day after his duel, like after the events of the last chapter, he steps on Calagah for the first time. So he leaves Borisivo pretty quickly, presumably, but has spent some of this intermediate time in Spring Deep on the one continent. There's one lone continent on the planet of Imesh, we find out, which is where the Normans had held their capital at a place called Tolbaran. Spring Deep is the name of the keep that the current Archon owns. And they spend some time there. And then finally, like, we get the moment where they're going towards the research center at Calagah. It's now the weather is receded enough for them to go and set up camp.
There is, for the record, there is a ton of like Imesh lore at the start of this chapter. I mean, it's like bang, bang, bang. Like it's like, I mean, it is like a ton. I don't even know if it's worth getting into. But if you're looking for like the history of Imesh, go to this chapter. It's at the start of this chapter. It's like a ton.
And this like lore dump that we're getting in the universe is Valka reciting a lot of these things back to Hadrian from memory, right? And so we get another thing of the memory thing going on, and anything that she doesn't mention, Vas steps in and explains it. One piece of lore that I wanted to call back to from a previous episode when we were talking about the moons, when we were talking about the 2 moons that are on Imesh that we find out with Bina and Armand. I couldn't find anything about Armand. We get the lore reason here. The reason that the smaller moon, which does not have an atmosphere, is named after Armand. Armand is the first Mataro lord of Imesh. And so they named the moon after him. So there's no deep Kabbalistic meaning to this one. It's just the fact that the first Mataro's name is Armand. While Valka and Vas are like lore dumping this onto Hadrian, they have started a habit of calling him my lord, like Gen did. And of course, he bristles every single time he hears that.
Yep.
And finally, after this waiting period in Spring Deep, they're able to fly to Calagah, and they get there, right? They step off from Spring Deep to the ruins, and immediately Vas is directing some servants to go and like get the camp in order and set up, bring the algae, burn it, get the camp ready. Joining Vas and Valka, other than those attendants, is Tor Ada from Spring Deep, from Lord Perun Vasi. It's his scoliast. She is joining them on this trip, and presumably has joined them on this trip previously. Like, she seems like an expert in the area. Hadrian remarks early in the chapter that like I had forgotten how there's a possibility of the weather not being hot, right? Everything's hot in Borisivo, hot and sweaty. And he reminds us that Borisivo is at the equator of the planet. So it's always going to be tropical. Meanwhile, they're on the southern continent, which is further away. And he is like, it's windy and it's cold and it's very different climactically than what is happening in Borisivo. Valka loves it. It reminds her of her home planet in the canyons on Edda, which is where we get the Von Edda part of her name. So it means like Valka Ondera Von Edda. It means from the planet of Edda. And they begin descending into the site, her and Tor Ada, as well as Hadrian. Vas is staying back and trying to get the camp in order, but Hadrian, Valka, and Tor Ada go towards the ruins for the first time. I wanted to make a note. Hadrian mentions, I felt an absurd longing for the old coat I'd worn at home, which is the one that Gibson had mentioned to him in the throne room that like would not work on Tukros because Tukros was a desert. He's like, don't pack this. It's ridiculous.
Is that what
he
that
thinks
is?
about that one coat in this
hilarious.
moment. There's a weird little callback here. It's so funny. Yeah.
Like comments on like
I felt an absurd longing for the old coat I'd worn at home. Yeah, I feel the tales of the snapping about my legs and the shadow would cast against the basalt wall to our left. It's like, it's just a funny little thing that Rocchio throws in there.
Yeah, it is funny.
It's really obscure, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And Hadrian at this moment sort of shifts focus to the first time he sees Calagah. And he mentions that although like we get this indication that he's a good artist, right? He's done a good job of painting Borsivo. He did a good job of painting landscapes of Delos, especially we find out in the last chapter that like he had a picture of the view of Delos from the alleyway where he got his ass beat was in his journal. So he's good at drawing these landscapes. And he says, I've tried to draw this one picture in my head 1,000 times and I cannot do it. He says, the stones are darker than black. It is incapable of being replicated by a human. And I'll read a little bit of page 441, beginning with, my breath left me, leached out with the very sunlight, for the stones of Calagah were darker than any color I'd ever seen. Darker than my hair, darker than that blacker than black uniforms of the Legion. The entrance was perhaps 300 feet across, dominating the western wall of the cleft where it was at its widest. The cleft itself ran down below sea level, protected by a lip of stone that held back the sea for most of the year. What strange powers or peoples had contrived so grand a structure in so isolated a location? That vast aperture began as a tangle of angled columns of arched supports and buttresses, some as wide as a man, some thin as whispers, that processed inward by degrees, layer upon layer, all the while narrowing from 300 feet to the width of a door. The eye rebelled at this complexity, wandered until it was lost in it as in a deep wood. There was nothing to say. Why was I even trying? Valka touched my arm. I know. Wrong. The word came to me as if from the outside, pushed into my head from some higher space. It's wrong, I said. Valka gets confused in this moment why he says wrong, but she trying to prod him to explain what he's saying. What he is referring to is the fact that everything, just looking at it, he gets this severe sense that nothing in the geometry is parallel. So everything is off. Even by the slightest degree, there is no parallel lines in this entire thing. Which, if we're thinking of, I'm not a math expert, but if you're thinking of geometry, to get any structure to stand up, like you need a triangle, like an equilateral triangle is one of the safest structures that you can build. That's why it's like on trusses of bridges. And so like lines between the two triangles will be parallel. Like even though there's no parallel lines in a single triangle, the triangle next to the other triangle will have a parallel line eventually. Like somewhere there should be a parallel line and there are zero of it.
You would have to intentionally make it not parallel.
This is very non-Euclidean.
You would never make a structure this way. I also think that, once another time in our story thus far, we've had him describe not being able to draw something despite trying over and over again. The only other time he's said something like that is when he's tried to describe drawing Valka. And we know how important Valka is to the story. This suggests that like there's something unexplainable, but also something important about Calagah, I think. Is like he's returned to it over and over again and never can quite get the significance right, can never get a depiction that feels true to what it was like.
Yeah.
So this place is important for some reason, like extremely important.
Have you ever seen the episode of Rick and Morty where Rick makes something truly level?
Yes.
Yeah. And like Morty, like he's like, don't step in it, Morty. I don't know if you want to do that. Like, just don't do it. And Morty steps in and it's like, oh, I feel so good. Like it feels so, this is amazing. And then he steps back on the earth. It's like,
the world is
everything's
crooked.
wrong. The world is crooked. And like it goes through this existential nightmare. It's sort of the inverse of that kind of thing. He like looks at this thing. It's like nothing is right with this. Like everything I know about geometry is wrong.
Yeah.
That's the kind of feeling I get when I read this.
It's great.
He mentions her memory in this moment too.
She recalls
the fact that
exact degree to the decimal point of like the third decimal or something like that.
Yes, 0.374 degrees. And he's like, you have this memorized? And she's like, you wanted to be a scholiast, did you not? Like, you seem so surprised. Like, I'm old enough to be your mother. Like, I could learn some scholiast things. Wink, wink. Like, it's totally not her being a scholiast at all. It's nothing of scholiast related whatsoever. She's the polar opposite of a scholiast.
Well,
but
also,
that's her reasoning.
Hadrian has grown up around scholiasts. This seems different than that to him, right? Like, this is like weird. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Valka mentions, like, this is the first time I think we get her age, right? She's older than Hadrian by a significant margin, at least. I mean, Hadrian's like 23 at this point, right? 23, 24.
Yeah, he's a child. Yeah.
And so she's presumably like maybe double that, maybe older. We don't know. But she's older than he is. And then he like sort of like doesn't mention anything of it, but he says like, I could sense that there's something the doctor was not saying. Like, to your point on the fact that she claims that it's some Scully's trick. He knows he's interacted with too many Scullies to believe that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she's impressed that he's catching on to a lot of these like details, like the fact that there's not parallel here, blah, 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 like everything. And from the moment that she started reading him in on anything Calagah related or anything related to the Xenobites, he's shown his worth in terms of the ability to reach these conclusions that others have reached in a way shorter time frame. Now, that might be the narrator being like, oh, I'm super smart. It could be that. Or it could be like Hadrian really is spent an inordinate amount of time studying this stuff. And there's not a lot of people who have. And so maybe he is more well-read than, 99% of the people in the Imperium.
Yeah. They share a passion and an intuition for it, I think.
Yeah. He does have a strong intuition. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did want to make a note at this part, like as he's about to go to step onto the rune, he says, still, I did not mount that first step. A deep chill and a sense of foreboding had settled on my heart. So tying back to what you were saying earlier about this place being important, even at the very beginning, before he even steps onto it, he feels this sort of like weird churn in his, like a chill down his spine and a churn in his stomach before he's even made the first step. He asks what the stones are made of. And she says, we don't know. Nobody knows. We've looked under everything that we possibly could have. I've looked at it myself under an spectrometer or whatever, like all these different, what do you call it? My gosh, brain fart. All these different microscopes, all these different machines, all these different ways to try to analyze what the chemical compounds and the makeup of this stone is. And it is so dark and so black, we cannot tell. There's nothing, it absorbs so much light that there's nothing that we can do to study it at the lowest level. So presumably it's not ordinary matter at all. It's only black, and it must be some sort of exotic type matter, not unlike the way high matter is. So I don't know. I'm not a physicist, but I'll let the readers know my brief research. Exotic matter is a theory currently. We haven't found any exotic matter up to this point, but like dark matter, if you hear dark matter, that's sort of connected to the idea, the theoretical physical idea of an exotic matter, this matter that you cannot see or touch or that does not behave like you and I would understand matter to be now. So in our universe at our time, we have not discovered anything that is exotic matter. In the time of the Sun Eater, the only thing that is high matter that we can presume is high matter. That is ordinary exotic matter is high matter and potentially adamant, just because it maybe blocks high matter. But this is not like any of those either.
She says it's not even clear if it has molecular structure, which is crazy. Like that doesn't make.
What does that mean?
What would that even mean? Yeah, like what would that mean? It's like you can't even break parts of it off. It's like it's so weird. It just doesn't. There's no like frame of reference for how to even describe it from a scientific level. Just there.
He then places his hand on the stone, trying to examine it further, and it is cold, very cold. And then he moves it around a little bit, and then immediately yells, pulling his hand back, almost as if he felt like a cold shock of lightning from the material straight to his heart, like from his arm through his arm to his heart. And then afterwards, like feels tingling in his hand, like he's just gotten it out of icy cold water. Valka then is like, wait, what's going on? What's wrong? And Hadrian's like, it's cold. Like the rock, the stone is cold. And she touches the same stone. And she's like, this doesn't feel cold at all to me. And I think in the original version, it says it feels warm. And she's like, it changes it slightly, but like it just feels like normal or lukewarm in the new version of the book. But it's strange. This moment is really strange that he feels this shockwave and nobody else does.
Yeah, that's just like a big question mark. Like we don't have a frame of reference for that yet, but there's like an intensity. It's like he almost gets like stabbed, and then like everyone's like, "What's wrong?"
There's something weird going on. There's this foreboding that he had going into it that he can't make sense of the stone. And the moment he touches the stone, he feels this thing that nobody else feels. Is a really strange experience. And then Valka's like, all right, well, let's go inside. And like she starts walking up the stairs. And he said, I got to admit, I stared at her butt. Like, it's a weird thing to put. I mean, it's endearing. It's like, yeah, she's so, dude, the hips on this girl. I couldn't look away. And she's like, are you going to come? He's like, yeah. I'm on my way. He says, flustered by both her and by what had just happened, I looked down once more at my hand. I had not imagined it. Bending, I touched the step a second time and felt only the warmth of that sun-drunk stone. My eyes went up to Volca, now standing some 10 feet above me on the darkly blooming stair. I looked past her at the opening of the ruins, black walls darkly glittering all around. I knew then an instant of vertigo, as if the door of that ruin were the mouth of some well incalculably deep, and I were poised to tumble into its depths. A figure in flowing green appeared in the portal. For an absurd moment, I thought it was Gibson, and stood up straight, but it was only Torada. What is this weirdness that's going on? Like, that's three things back to back to back at the very beginning of him interacting with the structure, which I didn't realize. Reading it this time, it's clear to me very early that Hadrian is experiencing something that nobody else is experiencing here. And again, we've seen weird visions of Gibson before, right? Like, we saw a weird vision of Gibson as he's choking on the freaking Uman's tentacle. We saw the weird vision of Gibson with his nose slit when it wasn't. Like, there's some weird stuff going on with Gibson and him seeing visions of Gibson before. But in this case, it might just be the fact that Torada was wearing green robes and whatever. We don't know. And she shepherds them and she's like, come on. Like, what are you doing? Like, stop taking so much time. She's probably really excited, probably having to work on her emotions to show this stuff off, right? Like, anybody, for something that's so secret, right? Like, this is the very secret, you can't tell this to Chantry, the broader scientific community can't really know too much about this at risk of the Chantry getting involved and then locking everything down. You probably want to bring people that are experts or read in enough so that you can get new ideas to figure out what's going on here. And so Torada is expressing that in a way of come on, let's go. So is Volca, for that matter. As they are ascending and going into the passageway, which is a big hallway, Volca mentions that this complex is large and there are windows and air ducts and other entrances elsewhere. But this entrance on this part of the facility is the only door. Everything else is a window or an air duct or a chimney or whatever. This is the only door in the entire facility, is this front door here, which is weird.
Yeah, super strange.
It is dark. It is damp in there. It is lit by some phosphorescent tape that they have presumably put in before. And then Volca pulls out this glow sphere, which Hadrian immediately is like, there's a heresy that I'm just witnessing right now. She's like, this thing is not just a normal glow sphere or whatever, because she's directing it with her hand or her head or whatever to move around. And so she's walking around and sort of leading the way. And as the glow sphere is enlightening everything in the room, the stone is not just absorbing the light, but it's reflecting the light back in this kaleidoscope rainbow-esque thing along the hallway as they're walking by, which is fascinating. I can't wait to see this live action, see how they do that.
That would be sick. Yeah.
Torada, as they're walking further down this hallway, is mentioning the fact that we believe this to be a sacred site, and Hadrian's like, doesn't everybody just say everything's a sacred site if they don't know what it is? And Volca's like, yes, that's true, but you'll see why we mention that in a second. And they get to this round hub-like chamber where the spokes of a wheel are cascading off of this hubbed domed room. And we look up as Volca's sphere moves to the ceiling to show round glyphs that look exactly like the knot patterns that the Ummad had used in their artwork. Nothing in these hieroglyphs is possible to grok with our brains. They are not linear. They are not logical. And even if you had some sort of Rosetta Stone, there's no way that they could convey a meaning here. So Hadrian specifically mentions minds had conceived them, intelligences strange and incomprehensible. So we get this idea of this sort of I hesitate to say, very inhuman, very outside of our frame of reference, though our minds working differently could not possibly conceive what these runes hieroglyphs are trying to say. Looking at all this, Hadrian is marveling at the fact that this structure is nearly 750,000 years old, almost a million years old, and it looks brand new. Hadrian just can't believe it. And meanwhile, as he's observing all of the architecture, he compares it to the chantry steeples and chapels and what we would understand Gothic chapels to be nowadays, or, churches and things like that, where everything in the building is meant to make your eyes cast up towards the stained glass towards the natural light and all this different stuff. Everything in this building, in this place, is pushing Hadrian to look down and like almost not through the floor, but like the centering of the building is not upward focused, it's inward and down, unlike that of the chantry. And at this moment, he is 100% for sure there's no way the Umand could have made this structure. He may have been skeptical before. Seeing this firsthand, he became a believer in the idea that there's no way the Umand could have done this.
Right.
I did want to read this one portion of 446. I felt an echo of the feeling I had had sitting in Volga's apartments in Borsivo. Human, Cialcin, quiet. We had never been the only ascendant force in the galaxy. Small and strange as that tunnel was, it humbled me, made me recall that for all my breeding, all my family history, I was but one man alone in a cosmos strange and great and terrible. It's got to be such a fascinating feeling.
If you want to experience this feeling more, this is the feeling that is present in most classic cosmic horror. And this is actually sort of a trope with ancient ruins in cosmic horror, actually, is that you have presented in front of the character something that is clearly existed longer than us, doesn't make sense, it's clearly not made by us, and it clarifies sort of the tininess of what we are and the scope of the universe. So I think carrying forward, we should be thinking about, there's some sort of cosmic-y thing going on here. We're playing with themes that are like this. There's something way bigger going on than the characters fully appreciate, and Hadrian is sort of coming to terms with that as we're noticing it as well. He's connecting dots about the length of time this has been here, the weird language thing that's going on that maybe whatever, and then the fact that the material doesn't make any sense, like and the geometry, and just it's all adding up to create this picture of we don't know what's going on and we're probably kind of too small to appreciate what's going on. I actually like that he mentions his genetics, because it can be easy for us sitting where we are as regular human folks to put Hadrian or Palatine up on this pedestal as like these superhuman folks, but he's sort of calling out the fact that even he, as a Palatine, should be humbled before what's going on, because it's bigger than anything even that they are.
Volga then gets a call from Elomas that lets us know that the camp is now ready, and they don't have very much. They've come later in the day, and so they begin their trek back through the hallway and towards the camp. But this is the first of many trips we can presume into the ruins at Calagah. I am so stoked for the next portion of this book, because man, is it wild, the stuff that we're about to get into. But that's where we will end today's episode of the Devil's Rest Book Club. But we will continue in the ruins of Calagah, like Hadrian, going always forward
and always down.
And we will see you folks next time.
See you folks.
Devil's Rest Book Club is Cameron Elston and Drew Welty. Today's episode discussed chapters 61, 62, and 63 of Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio, copyright 2018. Empire of Silence was originally published by Daw Books on July 3rd, 2018. Quality editing and original music by Cameron Elston. Find us on YouTube. Contact us at devilsrestbookclub@gmail.com. Devil's Rest Book Club is a production of Disquiet Pods. This episode copyright 2026, Cameron Elston and Drew Welty. Thanks for joining us, and remember, rage is blindness.